Hi everyone, welcome back to another week on the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. This week we're working on this piece behind me and I'm sitting in front of it so you can kind of get some sneak peeks of the direction that it's going, but it's got some really pretty techniques on it. I've actually done these tables before in a completely different finish. This is a table from Bombay & Company and I love the lines of their furniture and these paint up really nicely. It's a great piece to refinish. In this case, I'm just doing a single. In the past, I've done these as a matching pair and they're just beautiful, kind of a blank slate on the front. So for this piece today, we're going to be putting together this look to coordinate actually with another piece that the same customer purchased from me that had a fleur-de-lis theme. So my challenge was to incorporate some of the same colors that are on that fleur-de-lis vanity and a little tiny hint of fleur-de-lis. We're going to be doing some blending with glazes today, which is really fun. This glaze from Redesign with Prima is new and it's absolutely beautiful. And of course, one of my favorite transfers is going on this one. So it comes out really pretty. I think you guys are going to love this combination. I also did something a little bit different and I photographed this one before it had all the decoration on it. And that's because I wanted to give you guys the option that if you just really love the paint finish, it's a beautiful finish on its own, or show you at the different stages how you can elevate that finish also depending on what look you're after. So it's kind of like a little bit choose your own adventure novel as far as what finishes you want to add and what you think suits you. So I'm curious to see which one you guys like better, the plain version or the more decked out one. Let's get started. Here's where I started on this cute little side table. I, of course, have already removed the hardware. I love working on Bombay & Company pieces. They're nicely made, but they do have this existing finish that's really shiny and almost has a coating on it, so you have to be really careful with the prep on them. Once I've cleaned the piece, I go over the entire surface with my Surf Prep sander. The 3x4 electric ray makes quick work of a scuff sanding. I usually add the foam interfacing pad and then a 120 grit paper, and that will let me go over the entire surface and just take down any of the existing shine that's on there. I try to not go through the existing finish. This did have one damaged spot in it, and then I'm going to clean it again, and this makes sure to remove any of that sanding dust that I just created on the surface. The other step that I always take on these Bombay & Company pieces is to make sure and prime them. So I use 2 coats of Salve primer in light gray on this one, and once that's dry, it's ready to start my paint process. For this base coat, I'm using Salve paint, and the colors I'm using are black and chocolate, and I'm going to do a black and brown blend, and this might look a little bit weird to begin with, but trust me, I've got a vision on this one and it ends up turning out really pretty. I'm going to start by going around the entire outside of the piece using the black paint. I'm applying it using my Klingon S50 brush. This is my favorite brush for laying the paint on. It holds just the right amount of paint. It's got a nice soft bristle on it, so it leaves a smooth, even finish without any brush strokes. I'm also going to take those drawers out and make sure I paint around the frame so that that matches as well. This first coat is not going to get me full coverage over that gray primer, but my second coat will take care of that. Going around the body like this ensures that I get the most professional finish possible. I never want my customer to find places where the paint stops or you can see primer or open wood or anything. So I try to find a nice, clean, smooth spot on the inside to finish my paint finish as well. And then I match the colors that are going inside the body to the colors that will be around the outside. Once I've got a border laid out in that black paint, I'm going to come to the inside and add some of that chocolate. This first coat will look messy and it looks a little bit scary. I feel like this is the step when a lot of people look at their work and think, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing, and they might get scared and even back away. But you have to trust the process, and I know people say that as a cliche, but it's a really true statement. This is just my base coat, meaning I'm getting my basic color layout decided. I don't need to perfect the blends between these 2 colors at this point. I really just want to get them laid on and try to cover as much of that gray primer as possible. I will perfect this finish in the upcoming coats. Some people might refer to this first coat as the crumb coat, and that's really true because you're just trying to get the coverage and get your color layout decided. So don't put too much stress into this first coat. I repeat this same process on all 4 sides of this piece, and then I'm also going to paint down the legs. My main goal here is to just cover up that gray primer. I'm going to put on some music and we're going to go ahead and repeat this process. So now my base coat goes entirely around my piece. I did a light scuff sanding using a 220 grit sanding sponge that's fairly worn, and I use it pretty regularly, so it might even be a higher grit than that. I did go ahead and change my colors on this next coat, and that's because the chocolate ended up being just a little too saturated. So I'm going to change it to Wiseout Earth, which is just a lighter shade of brown than the chocolate is. Other than that light shade in color, I'm going to repeat the same process that I did on my first coat, only this time I'm going to perfect those blends a little bit more because I'm getting closer to my final finish on this one. You may notice on the first coat I started with the black paint around the outside, and this one I'm starting with the brown in the center. I usually try to reverse my process, so whatever I start with I do the opposite on my second coat, and that's because I know that I tend to get heavy-handed on the color that I initially start with. And so this helps me balance that out, but there is no right or wrong way for which color you need to start with when you're doing a blended finish like this. This is just a 2-color blend, so it's a pretty simple blend, but it's a great place to start, and this is a great size piece to start on too. If you're just starting out finishing furniture, this would be a great place to practice your blends, especially having 4 sides. You could just kind of rotate it around and practice the same process over and over again. So I get those colors laid on, and I'm using my S50 brush up to this point, but when I get ready to blend, I'm going to pull out my Klingon B10 brush. This is a large block brush, and I'm going to run it through those colors. I keep my block brush facing so that the black section is always on the black and the brown is with the brown, and I'll rotate my brush as I work my way around. And this allows those colors to start working into each other. I'm using kind of a cross-hatching motion and brushing in every which direction, adding a little bit of water to keep my paint in play. Now let's go down and pay attention to the legs on this piece. I did the same 2 coats of blending on these legs, but there's actually a 3rd coat in this process, and it involves this Tiger's Eye glaze from Redesign with Prima. This glaze is gorgeous. It has tons of sparkle, and when you lay it on over that brown, it just gives you this soft antique gold look. So I added a little bit of my black paint onto this leg, and then I'm going over the section that had the brown on it using that Tiger's Eye glaze. The brown underneath gives me the full coverage that I need. Glazes come in a clear base, and so they don't generally cover that well. And so this is just going to add a little bit of sparkle over anywhere I had that brown paint. It's absolutely gorgeous, you guys. I love this technique and I love this glaze. So now that you saw me do it down onto the legs, you know that what I'm doing onto this piece, I'm going to repeat the process on this back panel. I don't generally paint the backs of my pieces, but this was finished on all 4 sides, and it's a small side table, so it has a high chance of maybe being in a place that's not up against a wall, which means I'm going to go ahead and finish the back of this one. I started by putting on an ultra thin layer of that black paint. I've already done 2 coats, so I have the coverage that I need, but I need that black on there so that I can work it into the glaze. You can blend with glazes, but I do need a little bit of coverage on there, a little bit of color on there to be able to blend with. And then I put that Tiger's Eye glaze in the center over the brown, and I'm going to blend those 2 together just like I did with my paint. You can see how that metallic glaze just gives a soft sort of glow to that center, and it's got metallic sparkle in it that doesn't even translate on camera, but when it hits the light, it's gorgeous. Once I add the black and the glaze on the top, I'm going to bring back out that blending brush. It's been cleaned since I used it for the black and the brown, and now I'm going to blend the black and the glaze very similarly to I did the coats underneath. Metallics tend to be directional, and what that means is the way that you brush them, it will show every brush stroke because they have metallic fleck in them that reflects the light, and so you'll be able to see every direction of your brush strokes. So I try to keep the direction of my brush strokes consistent, and what that means is I just go over it with an ultra soft hand at the very end and make sure my brush strokes are all going the same direction. This piece did have 2 keyholes on it, and my customer had a request to include just a little tiny fleur-de-lis. So I'm going to cast a fleur-de-lis mold from Redesign with Prima in amazing casting resin. I start by mixing equal parts of A and B of my amazing casting resin. I'm going to pour it into my mold. In this case, I'm pouring 2 molds at the same time. I'm going to wait about 10 minutes and then I could pop that out. I painted this in a bronze spray paint, and now I'm going to go over it with a little bit of foil from Artistic Painting Studios. Underneath my foil, I applied their foil adhesive and I let that dry for about 30 to 60 minutes until it's ultra tacky. And then I'm just going to go over it with my foil. I rub it into place with a nylon brush, and you can see that it just put that foil over the top, and then it exposes that bronze paint that's underneath and gives me this beautiful 2-tone look. At this point, my finish was so pretty that I chose to go ahead and photograph it. But I'm not done with this piece. We're going to add some more accents to it as well. Just wanted to show you what this paint finish looked like on its own, and it's an absolutely beautiful paint finish, and this would be a place you could stop if you chose to also, but I like to take them over the top. Since my customer also requested a little nod to the fleur-de-lis on the outside, I'm also going to add a nod to that on the inside. I started by priming the bottom of my drawer in a white primer, and now I'm going to add this beautiful fleur-de-lis paper from Redesign with Prima. This actually comes in a paper pack. It's one of 3 different designs that come in a pack together. I applied the Redesign with Prima decoupage gel underneath, and now I'm going to flatten it out using their silicone scraper tool, make sure I have no bubbles in my paper, and then I'm going to apply another coat of that clear decoupage gel over the top. So the decoupage gel serves as my adhesive and also as my sealer. Once this dries, I'll give it a light sanding with a 220 grit and add a final coat of that sealer, and this drawer will be done. She also wanted some brightly colored florals on this one, and she chose one of my favorite transfers from Redesign. This is the Lush Floral 2 transfer. I love the size of these blooms and the colors that are in them, and so I'm going to use just a few of the blooms for this transfer to add a little bit of decoration around the outside. I wanted to wrap the molding on this piece onto the drawer front, so I started out by doing the side of the drawer frame, and then I cut it, and the remaining piece I'm going to put onto the front of the drawer. I'm rubbing it on with the transfer stick that comes in the package and pulling away that clear backing as I go. Then I'll rub over it with my fingers to just get out any bubbles and seal all those edges. Once that piece is done, I'm going to put my drawer back in place, and now I'll match up the print on the piece that's going to be on the drawer front with the piece that's on the body. I need to trim this because I have this drawer molding around the edges, so I just used a razor knife and sliced around that portion. And I'm going to use scissors to cut off the bottom of it as well. There's a lot of cuts going into this section because I need to continue this not only onto the body and the drawer, but it's going to go onto the drawer underneath it as well. So I'll end up using all of these pieces that I'm cutting, but I just have to fit one piece at a time, and it's kind of like fitting together a puzzle. Don't hesitate to cut your transfers apart. This really customizes them by wrapping the body of this piece and the moldings and the body and the drawers and everything. I can really create a one-of-a-kind custom look. The final piece that I've cut off is going to go on the other side of that drawer molding, so I fit that in place. I'm going to slice off the bottom. That's going to go onto the drawer underneath, and then I can go ahead and rub this into place. And you can see how it kind of fits all together. I could have also chosen to wrap that molding, but I kind of liked the border that it created around the outside edge of this drawer, so I chose to just leave that. When I'm fitting transfers together like this, I usually start with the largest sections first. So I build my base with the larger blooms, the larger florals in this case, and then I'm going to start filling in using some of the smaller leaves and smaller blossoms that come in this design. This Lush floral design is perfect for that because it's got a bunch of different size florals and then also a lot of filler material. Once I've got everything laid into place, I use the Redesign with Prima polishing pad, and I'm just going to polish over the top of that transfer, especially going onto this dark background. That helps hide the halo around the edge of the transfer. The next thing I'm going to do is seal up this piece, and so I'm brushing on Wisal matte varnish, and I'm just using one of their premium brushes. I really like this brush for clear coat. It holds just the right amount of clear coat, a little less than what the Klingon would hold, and gives me a nice smooth even finish. This clear coat over the top is going to seal my paint that's underneath. It's going to seal my transfer and give me a little bit of extra protection. I like to do 2 coats on the entire body. When I'm brushing on clear coat, I try to not apply too much. I try to keep my brush strokes nice and smooth and even, and not to overload my brush too heavily. You can start to create bubbles in your clear coat if you've got too much on the surface. Here is my finished product, you guys. It came out absolutely beautiful. I love the bright cherry florals against this gold glazed paint finish. My customer loves it as well. So this was a really fun piece to work on. I hope you guys enjoyed this process. If you did, you can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com. You can find links for everything I use in the description for this post, and don't forget to click that subscribe button.